Recently, I've been uploading videos that have covered software mods to Melee that I'm in favor of implementing. In chronological order, these videos consisted of the implementation of the polling drift fix, changes to UCF, and the addition of button remapping so that GameCube controller users can jump with one of their shoulder buttons. That brings me to the final video within this series, which will cover the remaining rule set changes I'd like to see. Most of these rule set changes will pertain to general rules within the official tournament rulebook. All in all, I'm confident that this will be a productive video when it comes to discussing what the endgame rules for Melee might look like. The first rule set change I'll be going over is a reduction to the in-game timer. To be exact, I believe that a 6-minute timer is the correct duration. I say this because unlike other fighting games, Melee is played with a timer that is notoriously too long. Timeouts are practically a spectacle within the Melee community due to how unfit the 8-minute timer is for the average Melee match. While it's important to avoid a Street Fighter X Tekken situation in which timeouts are expected to happen, timeouts do deserve to be a legitimate strategy, and currently they aren't. It's worth noting that 4 years ago, the Tournament Royal Flush ran a 7-minute timer and still didn't encounter a single timeout over the course of the entire tournament. This is a good data point for why the Melee community shouldn't be afraid to shave 2 minutes off the current timer. I believe that the Melee community currently has a stigma against timeouts in general, and that we should be willing to experiment with the idea of the timer putting on pressure to interact. The second rule set change ties into the previous one. This rule set change involves reducing the ledge grab limit, which is currently set to 60. The ledge grab limit of 60 is intended to coincide with a timer of 8 minutes, and so by that logic we would reduce the ledge grab limit to 45. However, I want to raise the possibility that reducing the ledge grab limit by even more may be warranted. To be exact, I believe that reducing the ledge grab limit to 40 isn't out of the question, and so the Melee community should keep an eye on this so that we can find the best number. Another possibility that can't be ruled out is different characters having different ledge grab limits based on how rapidly they can re-grab the ledge. The reason I can't say much for certain here is because the current timer is so long that hardly anyone is willing to plank, but if the timer is reduced to 6 minutes, then timeouts will become a legitimate strategy. The Melee community will have to decide what the best system is from there. Therefore, I recommend starting with a ledge grab limit of 45 but being open to experimentation. The third rule set change ties into the previous ones as well. This rule set change addresses Jigglypuff's air stalling, which is a subject in itself. Jigglypuff is notorious for being able to spend extended periods of time in the air through the use of side B stalling. However, Jigglypuff's air stalling is problematic for some characters even without the use of side B. As someone who isn't fond of subjectively deciding whether stalling was performed or not, I want to bring attention to the airtime stat that shows up in the post-match results. This metric is similar to a ledge grab limit in that it isn't perfect, but it's the best objective metric the game provides us with for keeping track of Jigglypuff's stalling. I'm confident that limiting Jigglypuff's airtime will end up being necessary if Melee is given an appropriate timer, as it's the only way to address her ability to shave time off the clock. Jigglypuff's airtime limit would be set to a certain percentage of the match, such as a third, a half, or 2/3. The 30-second intervals that fall between those could also be considered. Finding the best airtime limit will require some trial and error to make sure that Jigglypuff players aren't unfairly punished for playing normally. The next rule set change involves modifying several of the stages in order to remove their uncompetitive aspects. The Melee community currently modifies Pokemon Stadium specifically by freezing it. This stage mod is considered necessary because there are many players who believe that Stadium shouldn't be legal if it isn't frozen. However, I believe there are several other stage mods that should go through as well. The first stage mod I recommend is freezing the background of Final Destination so that it doesn't deviate from its original one. It's worth mentioning that this stage mod is already in effect on netplay for the sake of reducing latency between players. However, there's another reason to enforce this stage mod. The reasoning has to do with the white FD background being obnoxious in several ways. For one, it's extremely difficult to see costumes such as White Marth and White Peach when this background is in effect. Secondly, the white FD background causes screen shake when it arrives, which is unnecessary. The second stage mod I recommend is causing the side platforms on Fountain of Dreams to neutral start. To be exact, the side platforms should spawn at the height between which they normally would, as can be seen in this clip. This is much fairer than the default spawn points, which are rigged in favor of the player who spawns on the left. The third stage mod I recommend is removing the wind from Dreamland 64. Just like items, Dreamland's wind is RNG based and offers no competitive value. Similarly, the Shy Guys on Yoshi's Story should be removed as well, as they cause a ton of interference. To recap this video, I've gone over a total of 4 rule set changes. The first 3 rule set changes are closely related to each other. These involve reducing the in-game timer from 8 minutes to 6, reducing the ledge grab limit from 60 to 45, and introducing an airtime limit for Jigglypuff. I can say with certainty that a 6-minute timer is appropriate, and that the ledge grab limit and airtime limit rules should remain open-ended so that we can find the best system. Next, I believe several of the tournament legal stages should be modified. The Melee community currently freezes Pokemon Stadium, but most of the other stages should be changed as well. FD should have its background animations frozen as to remove the white segment, and Wind and Shy Guy should be removed from Dreamland and Yoshi's Story respectively. Lastly, Fountain of Dreams should be given a neutral start. That wraps up my 4-part series on software mods and rule set changes. To recap this series, I began by advocating for the polling drift fix in order to improve input consistency. Next, I proposed a UCF rework which contains a bigger shield drop range in addition to dashback out of crouch and 1.0 cardinal fixes. After that, I advocated for button remapping at the character select screen so that GameCube controller users can perform shuffles and other techniques more comfortably. And finally, I listed the rule set changes you saw in this video. That leads me to the final step, which is distributing the mods that I've shown you. A friend of mine and I have been working on a memory card which contains these mods. We're very much so hopeful that they'll become tournament legal, or at the very least be entertained by the community. We're also open to suggestions in terms of what people would like to see modded. Within a few days, I'll be posting more information about the status of this memory card and how people can become involved with our project. With that being said, thanks for following this series of videos, and please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy this type of Melee content.